evening's event is being This evening's event is being hosted by SUNY Oswego's Career and Technical Educator Preparation Department. And our topic this evening is going to be supporting and sustaining the future of career and technical education in New York. Again, super excited to host our panel discussion this evening. For those of you that might not know who I am, my name is Mike Woods, and I'm the proud director of the CTE Technical Assistance Center of New York State. We support all CTE programs across New York State, and we're an extension of the New York State Education Department CTE team, trying to fulfill all of the requirements of Perkins 5 legislation and to help escalate New York State CTE to the highest level possible. Before we get into our panel discussion this evening, I would love to introduce our representatives from SUNY Oswego who are joining us this evening. So I'm going to first begin with Dr. Benjamin Ogwo, who is an associate professor and the department chair for the CTEP program. Dr. Ogwo.
Thank you, Mike. My name is Dr. Benjamin Ogwo. I'm currently the chair of the department. So I'll be handing over to the coordinators, namely Jen, who coordinates the graduate program. She will introduce herself and perhaps mention one or two things about our graduate program and perhaps the certificate program too. Then Star, who is also our undergraduate program coordinator, will mention a thing or two about our undergraduate program. Once more, welcome to this very first discussion panel of the department. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jan Woodworth. I am an associate professor with Career and Technical Education and the graduate coordinator for our department. What I can tell you about our graduate program is it is growing. We have doubled our number of graduate students over the last 3 or 4 years. In particular, in the biggest areas for the graduate program have been agriculture, family, consumer science, and business and marketing. So we are on an uptick, and that's a wonderful thing. Star?
Hi, I'm Star Madison. I'm the undergraduate coordinator, and I'm an assistant professor in the CTE department. As far as our bachelor program, we have 9 undergraduate programs in CTE. 3 of those programs will provide the student with an all grades classroom certification for agriculture, business and marketing, and family consumer science. And the remainder of our programs will lead to a grades 7 through 12 CTE teacher certification. And those would be in the areas of agriculture subjects, business and marketing subjects, family consumer science subjects, health careers education, technical education, and trade education. And I'm going to pass it over to Donna.
Good evening. My name's Donna Madison, and I am in the CTE department. I've been at SUNY Oswego for 22 years, and I'm a full professor, and welcome tonight. And I'm passing you back to Cynthia.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Cynthia Thomas. I'm a visiting assistant professor with the department. I also teach and kind of lead direction of the work-based learning certificate program, and that consists of 2 courses that is needed to become a work-based learning coordinator. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for introducing yourselves. And also a real quick shout out to Cynthia for all the work that she has put into making this evening come together. With that being said, I do believe that we have the dean of the program as well here. If we could please have her say hello this evening to the crew as well.
Hi, everybody. I hope that this is coming through. I'm in my car on my way home from work. I'm so sorry I'm not able to turn on my video.
You sound fantastic.
Fabulous. You got to love current technology. I could not be more excited for this conversation. As you've heard from our wonderful panel of faculty, there is so much energy and interest in the CTE areas that we serve, and I know that that is happening across the states for lots of incredible reasons. And so I'm so excited to join this team tonight, listen, learn more, and celebrate the amazing work and opportunity space that CTE provides for so many.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dean Spenceley. We really appreciate you joining us this evening.
My pleasure, truly.
Thank you. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and we will introduce our panelists for this evening. And thank you so much to the four of you for joining the conversation tonight. So in no particular order, if you would please introduce yourself, who you are and who you represent. We'll go ahead and start with Quindell Williams.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Quindell Williams. I am currently a CTE instructor in the Syracuse City School District. I teach the remotely piloted aircraft systems program there, which is long for drone technology. Prior to that, my career was in media and broadcast communications, where I was a photojournalist and drone pilot. And now I'm happy to be in the school district, leading and teaching kind of the next generation of students. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful, thank you. Terry Hughes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Terry Hughes. I am currently the teacher recruitment and retention specialist in the agriculture education outreach team at Cornell University. As I think back to my career, everything I've done in my career has really prepared me for this moment, because I've had an opportunity to teach at a BOCES, teach at a home high school. I've taught at a couple of post-secondary institutions, Elford, and about 30 years at SUNY Cobleskill. And all of those places have allowed me to better prepare young people to come into the education field. So I'm really excited about that. My background's in agriculture. We cover a lot of things, but my specific technical area was the mechanical or engineering arena. And you'll learn more about me as we move along answering the questions.
Great, thank you, Terry. Jasmine Price.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jasmine Price. Currently, I am the vice principal at PSLA at Fowler High School, which is a high school in the Syracuse City School District. So I'm at the same school as Mr. Quindell Williams. Our school is a CTE school. We have 14 different pathways that our students choose from. And I'm very happy that you all invited me to be here tonight, and I cannot wait for our conversation. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Jasmine. And last but not least, Michael Amastra.
Hi there, my name is Michael Amastra. I currently work for the New York State Education Department, that's the building behind me, as the associate for business and marketing education. So I provide oversight and leadership to business and marketing, work-based learning, middle-level CTE and information technology. And prior to that, I had a career as a business and marketing teacher.
Great, thank you, Michael. And again, thank you to all of you for being here this evening. So our protocol moving forward, I do have a series of questions that I will put out in front of our four panelists. And then at the end of the conversation, we will open it up for Q&A to any folks that are joining us this evening. Every question doesn't necessarily need to be answered by each of our panelists. However, the very first question I'm going to ask, I would like for each panelist to partake in an answer. So in no particular order, you can chime in as you see fit. I would love to know, and I'm sure the audience would love to know, what started your journey in career and technical education? Whomever would like to go first.
I suspect, looking at the folks, my journey may have started before anyone else on the panel, so I'll get started. I am a product of CTE. I didn't know it when I was a student in an FFA program many, many years ago. We called that vocational ed, but not just my high school experience, but I moved on to the two-year technical side of things. And that those two experiences that I had probably impact my life just more than any other thing that occurred. If I were to answer the question succinctly, what caused me to choose a career in CTE? Yes, that prepared me to go in a lot of different directions. In my case, it occurred during my student teaching. So when I started and chose to pick an education major, it was really an insurance plan. It was a backup plan, but student teaching solidified my interest in becoming a teacher and being in this field.
Thank you, Terry.
I can go next. I think my answer might be slightly different from everyone else on the panel. I really started my journey with CTE when I started my journey as a teacher. in this building at PSLA at Fowler High School. And before teaching, I did not know much about CTE, but when I started teaching, I was introduced to a lot of the CTE pathways that we had in our building, and we've really grown since I started my career path with SCSD. So getting started with the Syracuse City School District and really learning that we have a commitment to getting more programs, learning more about CTE pathways, and really introducing our students to lots of different career choices is how I got started with CTE.
Wonderful. Michael or Quindell? Quindell, it looks like.
Yeah, I'll hop right in. So I guess my journey kind of just recently started about 4 years ago. Prior to that, I got my undergrad degree at SUNY Oswego in broadcast media communications. And then I took that degree and started my career in broadcasting in the Syracuse, at a Syracuse news station, where I became a photojournalist and editor, and then a drone pilot. And in that time, as CTE was kind of getting started in the Syracuse City School District, I was called on to be a career coach, first for the media program that's at ITC, which is a school in the Syracuse City School District, and then a career coach for PSLA in the drone program, in which I currently teach. So before I became a teacher, I was a career coach coming in as a professional from the industry, kind of telling the students, what we did in the industry, and kind of letting them know, where the pathway in which they were in, how that can lead to, a career. And so since, kind of being thrust in the CTE world as an instructor a little under 4 years ago, I've kind of, been full steam ahead and without, any breath, really just, taking classes back at SUNY Oswego to earn my teaching certification, as well as teaching full time. So it's been a journey. I'm learning. I'm enjoying it. But most of all, I'm really glad to be a part of CTE and seeing kind of where it's going to go.
Thank you, Quindell.
All right. So my journey actually started, back in high school. So I took technology and business classes. I didn't really even know what business education was until about 11th grade. And I signed up for a class. I got involved. My school had both career and technical student organizations, DECA and FBLA. I ended up eventually graduating from SUNY Oswego with my undergraduate in business administration. Still had that, teaching bug and wanted to give back. So I ended up getting my master's through this, at the time it was called the VTP department. Now it's called the CTEP department, in business and marketing education. I had the opportunity to work in a few different school settings, including working at community college level and also as a business teacher at the PTEC program. And about 4.5 years ago, I saw the opportunity at the department. There had not been a business education liaison at the department in some time, so I was excited at the opportunity to relaunch that at the department, and I've been there ever since.
Great, thank you all so much. So all of you indicated your pathway in your journey, but let's go a little bit deeper. What exactly helped you to get where you are, the people or the experiences, and what advice would you give to somebody to get them going in a similar direction, and what supports or experiences should they look for?
Again, I think mine happened maybe more so in my 2-year associate degree. As a work study student, I had some skill set. And interestingly enough, I was asked in that role to teach some welding classes. So I was a college student who was actually teaching my classmates because I happened to have a skill set that I had gained. I think I had those two things. I had that and just the circumstances of things in my area. I was also involved in 4-H. And as a 4-H, there's a model to create junior leaders, and that allowed me to do some things. And actually, as a college student, the leader disappeared. So Terry, the junior leader, who was a college kid, became the leader of our 4-H club. And all of a sudden, I began teaching young people. And in that mode, someone came with an encouraging word and said, have you ever thought about me to think about that? Because at that point, I was still planning on going home to the home farm.
Great, thank you, Terry.
Yeah, I would say, experience is helpful, but key to me was networking. My network was really, the folks that I knew, or the folks that knew the things that I was involved in. I didn't even know Syracuse. I knew that they had some CTE programs, but I didn't really know a whole bunch about it while I was in my previous career. But folks who I either went to college with or had some type of relationship with, brought me into the school to kind of see all the cool things that are going on in the CTE programs, and still, I'm blown away by all the many things that students have at their disposal today that I wish I had when I was in high school. So really my network and the people I've known and entrusted the skills and the experience that they know that I had to kind of take over the reins as the remotely piloted aircraft systems PTEC program teacher at PSLA currently.
I'll say for me, when I first started teaching, like I said before, I didn't really know much about CTE. And then when I started teaching at a high school that had all these different CTE pathways, I started to see kind of like the excitement and the zeal that our students have for these pathways that they themselves have interviewed for, are interested in, and really have a passion for. And so when I started to see our students really taking leadership roles in their CTE pathways and learning about the different projects they were doing and college courses that they were taking, how they were collaborating across CTE pathways, I thought it was really cool. And so that kind of got me excited about, what is CTE? And I was an English teacher here at PSLA. And so I started to ask more questions about how can I collaborate with some of the CTE teachers in my building to figure out what is going on in our CTE pathways and how we're getting students so excited about it. So really, for me, and kind of looping back to the question, our first question that we were asked, I think that my journey with CTE really started just by seeing the faces of our children kind of light up when they were in the pathways that they chose.
Mike,
That's
I
awesome.
want to add that I wouldn't be where I was today, where I am today. I don't want to make this feel like confession, but I was a not stellar high school student. Let's just leave it at that. And so my dream of going to Cornell, or my thought of going to Cornell right out of high school, was not going to happen. However, my experience at Alfred enabled me to shift gears, grow up a little bit, and have my grades a little better. But still, the point I want to make here is that a day doesn't go by that I don't think of an individual who enabled me to get into Cornell. That person, Dick Church, paved the way for many, many people to do that. And I do what I do today, modeling his behavior and helping others. So a person made a huge difference in me getting to where I am.
It's a great point to share, Terry. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would say, definitely having people and mentors who believed in my potential and encouraged my potential, including, my own CTE teachers, both at, the secondary and post-secondary level, were key to helping me get to where I am now. I think another eye-opening experience, was my time in the master's program at SUNY Oswego, because that sort of opened me up to the bigger world of CTE, because, I was focused on the world of business and business education. And I think that's helped me in my current role because, really as CTE, we're, one giant family, and we need kind of all of these different functions to make the world go round. And it's really helped broaden both my conversations with, people from other content areas and conversations with administrators about sort of, setting the bigger vision for CTE in their districts.
Awesome. I think this next question will be fun, given the fact between the four of you, there are different lengths of tenure in CTE. And so during your tenure, what have you seen change in regards to CTE? And where do you predict CTE is going in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years plus? So what has changed and where do you see it going from what you've experienced with your tenure in CTE?
Well, I can speak for the high school that I work at, and I can just say what has changed from when I started till now is just the sheer interest in CTE. Just this year, one of our programs at our school doubled in size. And so I think just projecting out to the future, I really feel like there are no limits, there are no bounds to what CTE can do and where we can go. And I think that the more people join different CTE programs, the more buzz that is generated around CTE, the more people that will be able to benefit from it, from having access to it.
I kind of want to piggyback off that answer because definitely the interest, I think, is the big thing. We see a lot of demand and a lot of CTE in the conversations about graduation measures in New York, which we're having right now. There's also a lot of interest in thinking outside of the box, in terms of, we have, the traditional programs you see at schools and tech centers. We have people talking about starting programs in esports. We have people talking about programs in professional diving, drone technology, and, things we might not have necessarily thought about, 5 years ago. And I think, as the workplace changes at a faster clip, CTE is going to change at a faster clip. And, I think the graduation measures work is going to kind of grab onto that. And I'm hopeful that it will really kind of elevate the conversations at higher levels about CTE in New York.
There continues to be some perceptions that are not correct about CTE. In my era, growing up, engaged in CTE was really a challenging place, and the opinion of individuals who came through those programs were not really looked upon favorably by society and a lot of peers, and it was really kind of a negative, the dumping grounds, all those kinds of things that existed. Now, having gone through the 80s, where a lot of things really suffered because of budgets, and then we trying to survive the 90s, what I see very interesting, what's changed in the last 5 or 10 years, is I would not have believed that I would have had conversations with academics at high schools, administrators. And this occurred about 15 years ago, where high school administrators came to us and had conversations. These were math department chairs, these were English department chairs, social studies department chairs, who were at the table because they wanted to reconstruct the CTE programs in their schools, because they had recognized that there had been so many things eliminated from school. Many students didn't want to come to school. And even though that wasn't their passion, they did not work in a place where the students didn't want to be. And so I see in my career in these last 15 to 20 years, and I see it brightening even more as the need and demonstration a shortage of individuals in these technical fields, the sun is truly shining on CTE. It's our time to step up to the plate and swing away. We can't sit back and let these opportunities go by. And I really, it's why I'm still swinging, right now, quite frankly, because there's some great opportunities that I think we can really make an impact, not just in CTE, but on our educational system as a whole.
Yeah, I'll just briefly say, I mean, as you know, I'm still pretty early in my CTE career, but I would just say like the approach to learning and teaching seems to be different, as you know, especially since, you know, I was last in high school. You know, I think teachers and students are, you know, looking for new, innovative and engaging ways to learn and teach. And I think CTE is kind of really being the forefront of that. And, you know, collaborating with other teachers. You know, Ms. Price mentioned how she was an English teacher, and just trying to figure out how, you know, drone connects to English or math and science. And, you know, you wouldn't imagine how close those things relate to each other until you start to have those conversations. And I think as those conversations continue, you know, CTE can only get stronger. The interest can only get stronger, and, you know, this, you know, will continue to grow. So I'm excited to see. You know, I don't know, you know, where drone is going to be in the next 10, 15 years. I know it's changing rapidly and ever evolving. Even now, as we're talking, there's things that I have to, you know, go back and check and look, because things are changing every day. But I'm excited to kind of see where the next level is for CTE, and I think it's only going to go up from here.
Quindell, I'm actually going to piggyback off you. I don't know if I'm allowed to, but I'm going to. When you said excited, that really resonated with me, because I too am excited. And so in my tenure in CTE, I've seen a lot of changes. And so Terry can relate to this. Back when we were ag kids in an FFA, you know, sometimes it was called cows, sows, and plows, and the kids were going back to the farm where they were going to be future farmers. And agriculture education FFA is so much more than that in today's CTE world. And I think the pandemic brought a lot of things to light as to how important career and technical education is. And there is a moment for us right here and right now where there is momentum behind career and technical education. There is a glimmer and a shininess to it. And all of us are here this evening at 6 o'clock in the evening, engaging in this conversation because we are passionate about CTE. We believe in CTE and the impact that it has for students, not only across New York State, but for the United States in total. And at the end of the day, all of us and our colleagues across the state, we are stewards of CTE. And it is our due diligence to continue to push the needle forward and to share the great news of what is taking place in CTE, and also to continue to give our students the best experiences possible so they go out, conquer the world, and they too share their love and passion of how career and technical education helped to guide them in their path of this crazy thing we call life. But I digress. I just was super passionate about that. And I think, you know, kudos to all of you for taking part in this conversation this evening. It is greatly appreciated. With that being said, so CTE, shiny object, you know, we keep hearing about it through news media, we see it in social channels, so on and so forth. What experiences might you have where either the news media or perhaps social media has played a role in benefiting the great things that are happening within CTE?
I can talk a little bit to social media. I mean, I use social media all the time when it comes to my classroom. You know, just okay, students are flying today. Let's show a different perspective that, you know, most people don't see, or highlighting the great things that students are doing. Kind of shouting from the rooftops without shouting, but just, you know, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, just kind of meeting the students where they are, because they get excited about that. You know, anytime I'm taking pictures, oh, Mr. Williams, are you gonna post that to social media? I want to show my parents what I'm doing. And that also brings excitement to the parents and the community, because now it's not, you know, just the classroom or where they are. Now parents and the community are seeing what students are doing, the practical things that we say that we want the students to learn and do. Hey, this is what they're doing. You know, we're showing you in real time, and using social media, you know, any type of media to kind of display that, I think is a win if used correctly and responsibly, obviously, because those things can go left if you don't use them the right way. But obviously, just really highlighting and shining a light on the excitement. Just going back to that word, the excitement of what not only the students are doing, but what we as educators are doing to highlight what they're doing, and it just really makes my job much easier and excited to come into the building day in and day out.
I have to agree with you, Mr. Williams. I know that several of our CTE pathways in our school utilize social media to kind of put it out there. This is what we're doing today, or this is the project that we're working on. And people all over our communities see that kind of advertisement or publication, and it really gets like a buzz going for people to think about, you want to go to PSLA, well, what program are you trying to get into? And it ties back into what Mr. Williams was talking about earlier with that networking piece. Even as young as our students are, anywhere from 14 to 17 years old, they're talking to their younger siblings about, I was in Mr. Williams' class today, or I was in computer information systems, I was in my fire rescue class, and they're sharing the experiences they're having and how cool it is and the things that they get to do, the field trips they get to go on. I went to a college campus, so word of mouth as well as social media has really helped us a lot when it comes to just boosting up the interest in our CTE pathways.
And just to quickly piggyback off that too, the network, like sharing my network, through LinkedIn, I have professionals who are seeing the things that these kids are doing, earning their, FAA commercial Part 107 drone license while they're in high school. That's the thing. Hey, when these kids are ready, I got jobs for them. I got opportunities. I got internships for them. So, again, just making that connection. So it's not just lip service. They can actually see this tangible, thing that is happening. Like, hey, okay, there are opportunities outside of this classroom, and what you're doing today is going to set you up for your future. So it's really, really cool.
So,
Yeah. Go
go
ahead,
ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to add to that, one thing that's, very important. So first of all, to answer the question, definitely social media, radio, TV has been really critical and eye-opening in kind of, getting the message out about what we do in CTE. But, I guess my advice to, the CTE teachers on this call would be, to really become good friends with your, whoever's runs the social media for your organization. That's benefited me, both as a classroom teacher, and I've also, even though I don't have the keys to social media in my current position, I've made friends with the people who do, and, made sure that, from our state lens, our social media is talking about CTE and kind of highlighting, the work of our CTE professionals in the organization.
So I'll mention two things. One related to my field area. The whole idea of the social media, engaging students to share their experiences. Again, I think we're in a universe where fewer and fewer students are getting the kinds of experiences that we'd like them to have because of the culture that we're in. I'll pick agriculture. I think about myself, in my case, maybe 40% of the students were somehow connected, but there were a lot of ag kids, but still we were small. As my children went through school, pretty small number. To think about, I don't even want to think about what the number of students are today who are getting an on-farm experience, but my grandchildren are fortunate enough to do that. They're pretty social. And by using that tool, it actually becomes an opportunity to create some literacy around particular disciplines. And it doesn't matter which one we choose, but I do know that that many other students are learning about this subject matter because of how our students in CTE are sharing and becoming inquisitive around those things. But the first thought that came to my mind, like when you talk about this, was the fact that last night at about 9 o'clock, my wife noticed on a Facebook post that's a closed agriculture teacher group. A teacher was in trouble, had a problem, and was looking for help. And so I didn't respond in the Facebook mode, but I texted her number directly to see if I could help her. And we had a conversation about, I don't want to promote this, but we had a conversation about a half an hour to help guide her through a struggle because of that social media kind of a tool. And I say that to say that those technologies are actually helping many teachers survive as they maneuver through a million different things, and each other are mentoring. Even if it was not one person said, I'm not sure I'm the right person to help you, but please know we love you. So I think that's another aspect of how we can utilize this technology to strengthen and what I'm going to call sustain our future.
Great. So speaking to CTE, we know that CTE has so many great immersive experiences, but of course, with those experiences, there's always going to be a price tag for all the cool things that we do. And so we know that budgets are finite, and sometimes we need to get creative in terms of getting the great tools that we need to really run our programs well and give students the experiences that they deserve. And so what are some potential ways that you've garnered some grants or some sponsorships from maybe partner organizations, business and industry, that have been beneficial to your programs? And how has that impacted everything that you are able to offer to your students? And if you haven't had the opportunity to get some grants and additional funding in that sense, maybe some on the panel have and can share some tips and tricks. I see Terry smiling.
Yeah, who knew an ag engineer could write? But I am a competitive guy, and I learned that if I write and work hard effectively, people would actually give me money to do what I wanted. And once I got a sniff of that, I spent a great deal of time writing grants while I was at Cobleskill. And the focus of those grants were actually to help secondary CTE. So I spent about 20 years seeking those kind of things, anything from USDA grants to, education grants. But we've helped enable teachers in our agricultural field. We have lots of new teachers who are seeking small grants, anything from $500 to $1,000 to maybe $10,000. We have a number of organizations who are supporting our professional development activities. And so we have a significant amount of money. We're believers in investing in that PD because it's going to give us the best return. So those are some really good things. And then we have a system in our little circle to help train teachers so that if teachers actually apply to the project that I'm a part of, they can receive some small grants. So any teacher in the state can receive some money through some greater sort of funds that we have put together, because we know the importance of a teacher bringing in some external funds to their school. So all of those have been very valuable, and we've been very fortunate in the agricultural field to have significant amounts of dollars to do that.
I would say to funding, I've been fortunate enough to inherit a program that it's a PTEC program. So I get, PTEC grant funds. I believe it's a Perkins grant. But, we do get some pretty good funding to, drones are expensive and kind of the tools that we use. So, but having said that, because it's such a newer technology, it's sometimes difficult to find the right tools that we need for the classroom or outside of the classroom. But because we are a PTEC program, we've been fortunate to be able to kind of get some of the industry leading tools that are changing. I mean, again, we buy a drone today, and 3 weeks from now there's an upgraded version to it already. So just trying to stay ahead of that and trying to keep up with that is the challenge, and basically and also trying to find the vendors who supply these tools has been a challenge as well. But it's been fun, and sometimes frustrating to navigate that space. But as I've continued to learn in my role, it's something that I think is necessary, especially when the kids see those tools that they're able to use and sometimes they know how to use it much, much better than I do. We're all learning and excited about that.
I can remember, Quentin, you just mentioned, and I suspect that you would agree. I remember my experience back at Elford in the early 80s. We used to use some high-tech tractor so that our students could work on those things. And then we discovered that was probably one of the poor choices that we made, because in a blink of an eye, just as you say, 5-10 years down the road, it'd be like having a car that had 900 miles on it and it's 10 years old. It's not helping us from a technological standpoint. So the reason I mention this is because if I flash back to another pseudo grant partnership, when we forged the partnership at Cobleskill with John Deere, a lot of people said, "Oh, isn't this great? You're getting all the equipment." Well, two things. One, the great part was they were loaning that equipment to us on an annual basis, and they refreshed it every year. So we were able to have the newest technology as it moved through. The other thing is, people didn't realize, again, the most valuable part of that was the required training that they had for all the faculty. So all the faculty then were required to go through the training. Those two things were worth way more than a few dollars. So there's a lot of different partnership, and it speaks to exactly what you're describing, Quentin.
I'd say the majority of my teaching career, I worked in a P-TECH program. So I had the opportunity to take advantage of the P-TECH grant, as well as a big part of what we did was building relationships, with local businesses that were our sponsors. So sometimes by building those relationships, you can either, get older equipment, or, come up with, kind of mutually, beneficial things for both parties. In CTE, Perkins is the main source of funding from the federal level. And in my role right now, I work to help get that money down to the school level. And there's also, I think as a teacher, and especially as a CTE teacher, where you're sometimes, run your own almost little mini school at times, there's an entrepreneurial spirit that you kind of have in looking at, different grants, in your content area. There's websites that have lists of teacher grants on them. So, I think it's, one of those things, in my content area of business tends to be a little less expensive than some of the others, but, in other content areas, it can be very expensive. And especially as the technology changes, all of a sudden what you bought not that long ago seems to be obsolete. So, there's definitely, opportunities to, enhance funding and get grants if you know where to look.
I think the other thing, Mike, is, and I jump on there, is that too often, depending on our backgrounds, and I'm in the agricultural background, we tend to be conservative. And so we very often don't ask for enough. We think too small. And so I would tell you that, and while I've had a fair number of grant writing things, and it's exciting to get a grant and that type of thing, I'm involved in a couple of foundations. And one of those foundations blew us away. It was just incredible. We worked with not huge donations, but we raised $100,000 in 6 months and got a project off the ground. And it was about helping and supporting young people. Another project that we thought we were going to have to spend a few dollars and thought we had all the money, but the state FFA Foundation raised $1 million to support a component. Those are some pretty big, heavy lifts. Maybe not all the things, but as we're even in working in our classrooms, we don't think big enough.
Jasmine?
I'm really fortunate that I have 2 P-TECH programs in my school, with 2 awesome instructors, and also a really great CTE director who I think is actually on the call as a participant, who collaborate and work together when it comes to funding and finding grants. So thus far, I have not had to, and listen, I was an English teacher, not a math teacher, so I have not had to, count any beans as of yet. But I'm really grateful that I have, our CTE teachers. We have a couple work-based coordinators at the building, our CTE director, and between all of them, they go out, they find a lot of support, a lot of money in our grants. And like Quindell was saying, we can't find enough, and sometimes the technology is obsolete by the time you get it, but we're learning as we go.
I'll vouch for you, Jasmine. I think Bruno's a pretty great CTE director. So
Yeah.
you got a good one there.
Hi, Bruno.
With that being said,
stop it, please.
Oh, Bruno, we love you. So with that being said, so I will probably kick myself later because I have several of my staff here. I think one thing to keep in mind when it comes to funding streams, yes, we wish that the pocketbook was endless. But when it comes to having true passion for the things that we're doing for our students and for the activities and learning experiences we want them to engage in, the first no doesn't mean it's the last no. And if there is a will, there is often a way. You just need to reroute and find an alternate course. So don't give up, have that resilience. And if you are creative and if you are willing to put the elbow grease into it, you will yield great things at the end of the day. So my piece of advice, the first no doesn't have to be the last no. Let's get into a little heavier topic, and we can go two different routes with this whenever you think about it. So let's talk about implementing strategies for sustaining recruitment and retention. And the reason why I say we can go two different ways, with the diversity on our panel, we could go from the student perspective, and we can also go from the educator perspective. And I would love to hear some comments and thoughts each way. So recruitment and retention, either student direction or teacher direction.
I guess I can start. So I think, one of the key strategies is, I think we have some tools at our disposal that we didn't have before, like social media, promotion, even, face-to-face conversations. I think being a CTE teacher, isn't necessarily one of those jobs you learned about on career day in kindergarten. So, I think there's a lot of, promotion that we kind of have to do through various means of recruiting and finding the right people to be teachers. And also creating and sustaining networks to support, teachers, through the process of having successful careers. There's a lot of points at which we lose them, and some points like retirement are unavoidable, but those people who leave just because they can't handle it, or some other reason like that could be avoidable, we need to really have some conversations, I think, about how administration supports their teachers, how how we in CTE community support our teachers, and keeping in mind that could be very different from the from the world of business and industry. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, you're good, Michael.
Okay, there was like you were all muted or something.
It was a tech blip. We're good.
Yeah,
sorry about that.
Yeah, so I think those are kind of the key things. I sometimes struggle with this because I feel like I wish I had a silver bullet solution to everybody, but I kind of be curious, and also I will say too, your students, are good, people to plant the seeds in as well.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that, Michael. Planting the seed with the students, again, just going back to that excitement is just having that student kind of, as CTE teachers, we wear a lot of hats. I think, we're teaching, we have, we're managing budgets, but we also have to be the biggest cheerleaders for our program. We have to be the biggest advocates for our programs. We have to be not only are we informing our students, but we need to inform the public of what we're actually doing. So, I fortunately have, the cool tools, like, we do a CTE expo every year in our building, where we bring all the different pathways into one building and kind of, show what we have to offer. And, I get the fortune of kind of planting my drone cage in the center of the gym and, flying around, and, that attracts the kids, obviously, but, we also want to let the students know that, this is not everything that we do. Yes, we fly, we have fun, but this is a tool, and trying to get the kids to understand that it's not just a toy, and trying to get the parents to understand that it's not just a toy. So they're not, well, you're not going to a drone program. Like, what are you going to do with that when you get out of high school? So just trying to educate, advocate, and just kind of be the biggest cheerleader for your programs as it pertains to the students. But just kind of, once those students kind of go through the program, and as Ms. Price said earlier, they're telling their siblings, they're telling their cousins about it. They're kind of, showing all the cool things and talking about all the cool things that they're doing in the program. And even to the peers that are already in other CTEs, you can kind of hear them saying, oh, what are you guys doing in this program? Oh man, I wish I was in that program. Or I wish I could be doing that. But yeah, just really allowing to plant that seed again with our students to, kind of spread the excitement to others as they come up.
Quindell, before the others share, could you extend a little bit? I know that at PSLA, you in the spring, I believe, you have where you all sit up in the gym and every program gets to highlight what they do, and the upcoming freshmen, I believe it is, come in to see the different programs and whatnot. Could you just share a little bit about that before we move to someone else?
Yeah. So it's called the CTE Expo, and we bring all pathways, not just from our school, but from throughout the entire district. So, we have, media, we have culinary, we have fire and rescue, we have law enforcement, we have geospatial, all these, absolutely great programs that, again, I wish I had when I was in high school, but, they all come to this one place, and then, which happens to be, our home base, PSLA at Fowler. They all come in there, and the eighth graders, so the rising, the current eighth graders, rising ninth graders come in to kind of see what those programs are. And they, they're given kind of a roadmap to kind of see, what they might be interested in. They have the opportunity to not only talk to the instructors of those programs, but other students. And really, that's really the students' opportunity to kind of shine and speak loudly about their program. And many teachers allow the students to really take over and kind of lead those things, I think. And, this allows for better, I guess, decision making when those students are trying to figure out what their next pathway or what their next goal is for the next 4 years of high school. So, they can choose, 2 or 3 of their top choices, and they'll interview for those programs. And yeah, it just kind of helps the students kind of see what they might be getting involved in, and also allows the teachers or the instructors to kind of meet those students early on and say, okay, yeah, you seem like somebody that you would really enjoy this program, or I would really love to have you as a student. And you're making those connections early, and I think it's a really good display for the programs.
Great, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that, Quindell.
And just to expand upon that, it's really a tool that I think our district uses for both from the student perspective, right? For both recruiting and retaining our kids inside of the CTE pathway. It's kind of like a grow your own program, right? So you expose the students to the CTE pathways early. They get a tour of all of them. They get to decide, okay, what are my top 3 choices out of all of these? And then they get to, like Quindell said, build a relationship with the teacher, build a relationship with other kids. And then as they are in the programs and they graduate, then we can kind of retain them, because a lot of them end up coming back to PSLA at Fowler as guest speakers, working in the community. They want to take other people on job shadows. I know for our barbering program, you know, sometimes he'll bring in a couple of the students who have graduated and either went to college and now are cutting hair on their college campuses or trying to open up their own barber shops. And then they come in and they talk to the students about, you know, what that journey is like. So we're recruiting the students. As soon as we have the CTE Expo, we're retaining them to the best of our ability throughout the 4 years, and then also beyond, trying to, you know, keep them engaged so that they can keep the younger students engaged as they come up through the program. So it's like, it's a big circle.
So in the world of agriculture, we are facing a resurgence of interest like we have not seen in decades. And so our student enrollment is going through the roof. We're expanding in multiple schools. In the last 5 years, we've added CTE programs to over 100 schools in the state of New York. We're now exceeding 400 teachers. So we're just in one of these modes that it's growing. I'm not sure we're responsible for it, but we're taking the ride. One of the issues that we face in this recruitment process is actually getting that student to be in that agricultural class and have them continue to meet all of the other requirements that they have. So I continue to work with teachers very regularly that have students that want to be in their class, but they can't fit it in their schedule. So I think that continues to be a challenge in our education world. I know that, I mean, I've got a granddaughter in 9th grade who I'm a little bit surprised. She thinks she wants to go into ag education now, but she can't take an ag class. And what attracted her was another program that's going to generate some college credit. Now, it's still a pseudo CTE, you know, a Project Lead the Way is going to get her into some architectural kinds of things, and that's that. So I think there are some things we face around student types of recruitment. I was going to share with Jan earlier. She's going to be helping me in about a week. Let's see, Thursday. No, it'll be next Friday. We actually, in the FFA, in the Student Leadership Development Program, we now have a ag education career development event where high school students create a lesson plan. They develop a lesson and then actually present it and are evaluated. Jan will be doing that evaluation. We had about 33 sign up for it, which scared us all. But I think, Jan, I can report to you right now, I think that number is going to hover around 26 or 27 students who will be competing in Buffalo on next Friday. And I will tell you the quality of, and Jan is going to look over some of the material that those students put in. I think she may use that as a benchmark for some of her graduate school kinds of lesson plans and objectives and the kinds of things. These kids are good. So speaking about retention, if we can plant that seed in the thoughts of our CTE students about the potential of teaching, who knows where it'll go. But one of our pieces of retention is we have some initiatives so that when a student expresses some interest, as college students who might be studying agriculture, they can be a Teach Ag ambassador. So I essentially host a special projects course for them while they're not involved in education yet. They're studying their subject matter. I work with them one night a week, and I have students from across universities. So from Alfred to Morrisville, Cornell, Cobleskill. I had one from Penn State last year in our group, helping them, coaching them. And I actually use them, part of this project, they each have to go out to high schools and do a little presentation about why they want to be a teacher. And that's one of the ways that we spread that word. So I'd share that little nugget in one technique that we're using to utilize students to retain them and expand our teacher pool.
Yeah, and I would agree with Terry that, you know, for what's largely an elective subject area for a lot of students is getting things to fit in schedules, you know, especially around, you know, other types of interventions that the student might need. And, you know, I think depending on the size of the district, the flexibility in master scheduling can vary. But, you know, I do think that, you know, working to try to find creative ways, like I had a conversation with a colleague last week about a student her daughter was interested in a very kind of niche area. And while they didn't have access to a program directly in that area, sort of, what similar alternatives are out there that can kind of plant the seed and help you to explore those things. So, I think that access is something, we need to work on, and also the exploration piece of students, helping them to kind of explore what their strengths are and looking for, maybe non-traditional ways, whether it's, through job shadowing, through maybe, coursework at an introductory level that kind of introduces some general concepts to really help to, get our students into the programs and classes that we teach, and also to, encourage them to keep going if they have an aptitude, and, maybe even if they don't have the most aptitude, but, they're a good student and you want to kind of develop their skills for whatever their next step they choose to go on to is.
Wonderful conversation. I think one of my biggest takeaways from that is it is our due diligence to plant the seed so we can harvest the future. And we really focus on that grow your own mentality. Unfortunately, when we're interacting with these youngsters in their high school years, it takes several more years until we can see them out in the field. So it is a little bit of a more arduous growing season. It's not as quick as, planting the garden in the spring and getting produce throughout the summer months. But at the end of the day, it is definitely a seed well worth planting. And I would also encourage you that in interactions with students, don't ever hesitate to put a shameless plug for being a CTE teacher. You never know where their path could lead them just because they want to do X, Y, or Z. If you just plant that little nugget in their minds, you could see them teaching alongside you one day, which I think is a really cool thing. Let's go ahead and do one more question, and then we'll navigate toward opening up for some Q&A from the audience. But as we know, in CTE, we serve all students across New York State. And what are some things that are working well within our sectors or our realms when it comes to ensuring that we are giving the best experience, to all learners, including those of special populations? So when I say special populations, maybe English language learners, maybe students with disabilities, perhaps economically disadvantaged. What are some wins and successes that we're finding within our own realms that are worth noting and sharing with our peers this evening?
I would say, just really, having patience with students, giving them grace and giving yourself grace to, figure out what's the best way for them to learn the material that you're teaching them. Because we know that, not everyone learns the same way, not everyone teaches the same way, but just really trying to figure out, what makes them tick and hone in on that. And it's not always easy, but when you do find it, just, giving them an extra hand, being next to them, standing next to them when they're presenting something that that they might be shy doing, just say, hey, I'm with you, I'll stand next to you. But just, and allowing them to see like, hey, you deserve the same opportunities as any other student in this classroom, and really championing them as well, to do their best and be their best, be their own best, not, they don't have to be better than anyone, but be their own best within that class or that setting. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of what I do, is just really, patience and giving each other grace to allow them to be their best versions of themselves.
And I would say, to add on to that, one thing I think we're doing really well right now is our greater conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion in New York, because, I think through that lens, we're sort of thinking about different ways that students can be successful, and we've always, I think, talked pretty well about, how we meet IEP needs for students with disabilities, but, we have students that are economically disadvantaged. We have students whose, English isn't their first language. We have students, who, gone through other, life experiences that, maybe weren't our own. And, I think having that knowledge and awareness and really investing in, kind of training the teachers in that mentality, because really, I think, the goal of every good educator is helping each student to be their best. And that's going to be different for every student. So I think we're building the toolkits of our educators in order to help our students be successful.
So when I first got into teaching and leading in this building, there were, I think the number was around 37 different languages spoken. Yeah, at PSLA at Fowler High School, like my first and second years of being here. We don't have that many languages spoken here now, but it's still quite a lot. All of our students receive free lunch. We have, I forget the exact percentage, but we do have a population of students who receive special education services and have IEPs and 504s. And I think that the biggest thing that has helped our students get engaged and stay engaged is the relationship that our CTE teachers have been able to build with our very diverse populations. And it's hugely important, right? For not only CTE teachers, but for all teachers and for all leaders and anyone who thinks that they're going to be working in an education space, to really know your clientele. And, building those relationships, making sure that the students know that you care about whether or not they're in school, whether or not they are participating in their CTE, you're calling them and checking up on them and, just constantly keeping up communication with their families as well has been hugely successful. The barriers will always be there. And I think that it's going to be really important for us to continue to be creative around how we address those barriers. But we can't say that we're working for diversity, equity, belonging, and inclusion if we do not think creatively about those issues. And so as a administrator of a school that is absolutely completely diverse, I'm really proud of the work that my CTE teachers do every day. They actually loop with their students from grades 9 through 12, so they get a really, really good knowledge of who the students are, who their siblings are, who their families are. And, they create in their classrooms like micro communities, which is really cool to see. And I think that our students feel really supported by that. And our teaching staff is really interested in how to figure out different ways to support them through, some of our students speak 3, 4, 5 different languages. Some of our students are coming here from other countries. Some of our students, work multiple jobs after they leave us. And so it's really a learning curve for them. And it's also a learning curve for us. But, when it all boils down, we realize that we have to come together. And it's a collaborative effort. The whole village has to come together in order to make sure our students are successful.
I couldn't echo your comments enough. In our field, the diversity is not where it ought to be in terms of the things that we're looking at right now. But when we talk about variation in student learners, we have a spectrum of individuals that our teachers are able to work through because of what you just described. In our field, if we're going to have a more diverse workforce in the future, the Commissioner of Agriculture has been very clear about the importance of expanding our reach into urban settings. And you're doing that. But in our field, that's not done as much as it needs to be. We just this year hired an individual to work full-time in New York City to help cultivate and support the interest there with the specific intentionality of bringing a more diverse population to our career area. Well, one of the things, and I've been in that business a long time, because Steve and I could talk about a lot of partnerships that we did. one of the things that and this is where I want to echo, is that students, I don't have to tell any of you, but students can quickly tell if you're not real. And so authenticity is absolutely essential if we're going to reach any students, but particularly those students who have been beaten down for one reason or another. And so they've got a little shield up, but they can see that authenticity and that real care. We often underestimate the value and the power of our words. How many times we've said a word of encouragement, and I'm sure there's people on this call who very routinely and sincerely give a word of experience or accommodation. And also in all of our areas have needs for individuals who can work at different levels. And so there's a place for every student in our various career field areas. But I'm sure that many people on this call have been shocked at some point in their life where a student comes back to them and you may just ask, well, I'm really glad that you did what you did. And they look at you and say, well, I did it because you told me to. And I'm like, I don't think I told you to, but I gave them permission to be successful. When we give that compliment, you're giving them permission to be successful, and they will believe in your belief in them before their own belief kicks in. And I think CTE teachers do that better than so many different places. So, Mike, I think, as we reach that, it's work. There's no question about it. There's need, intentionality. And we all have room to grow in that area, but
authenticity really resonated with me, Terry. And you're right. A student will read through the lines very, very quickly if you're not being genuine and authentic. Coincidentally, earlier today, I attended a full day session of special education teachers and CTE teachers having a summit. And we did a lot of different activities. And as we're talking through this, one of the activities came to mind, and it was called, Do You See What I See? And just because we see something one way doesn't mean that our students see something the same way. And in that classroom full of students, likely you have multiple ways that things are being seen. And so at the end of the day, like Terry said, it's a lot of work, but there are likely many instances within our learning environments where we owe it to our students to meet them where they are at this point in their life, and also maybe even at that point in that day, because we don't know what has taken place prior to them coming through our classroom doors. And to show that authenticity, and also to share gratitude, and like Quindell said, to have grace for them and grace for yourself, that will help you build those relationships that Jasmine was speaking to. And it's a really beautiful and magical thing at the end of the day. And, education and students, it's not a cookie cutter formula. They're going to come in all different shapes, sizes, backgrounds, experiences, so on and so forth, and really just kind of being malleable in that process and knowing that there's going to be flex and flow throughout their educational process and throughout what you're doing within your classrooms. So thank you for really sharing some deep moments there. With that being said, I would like to be mindful of our time together this evening. I would love to transition now. If there is anybody in the audience that would like to put some questions out there for our panelists, you are more than welcome to unmute yourself or drop it into the chat. But if you have any burning questions this evening that you would like for our panelists to react to.
Hi, everyone. This is Sheldon Cox from Rochester. How are you doing today?
Hi, Sheldon.
Hey, so I had a stakeholders meeting the other day, and we talked about recruitment in the part of the stakeholders meeting. And one of the things that a teacher said was how it's hard to recruit teachers into the field, new teachers into CTE, with that pay gap. A person, let's say, for example, automotive, can make significantly more money being an automotive person that now they, of course, they don't get 180 days of school days, they don't get weekends and summer off. Okay, that said, so they now how do you advocate or try to get teachers, future teachers in the field, knowing that there's this huge gap in terms of pay?
I think one thing you have to look at is, and I'm interested to hear what others have to say as well, is those non-pay factors. Because, yes, salary and benefits are important, and those are things, there's probably, at least for the foreseeable future, going to be that gap in most instances, but sort of focusing on, the personal, mental, spiritual needs of the individual and how those can be fulfilled, by a career in teaching and in teaching, career and technical education. Oftentimes individuals like being able to give back to the community that they came from. That's, especially true in, rural and urban settings. People really feel a sense of, pride and, for their community. I think some of these other, factors like, sort of like the intrinsic rewards, versus the extrinsic are kind of, the best summative way to, at least I would say, to kind of, start to look at that.
And while I'd agree, those are the kinds of things you talk about, Sheldon. I don't monkey around. I have heart-to-heart conversations with them. And if money is what's driving their decision, I'm not going to convince them to be a teacher. But what I always do is that I am always building bridges and not looking for those gaps. And so when I'm working with someone who, you're absolutely right. I talked with a person yesterday who's got a biochemistry degree, wants to think about being an ag teacher because she and her husband work about 5,000 acres in central New York and want to help their school get started. Her challenge is she would have to take more than a 50% pay cut to leave her 911 operator calling job. I mean, that was real yesterday in that conversation. So those kinds of emotional things, those kinds of give backs are pretty important. But I always talk to young people about, if you choose to be a teacher, be happy at what you're doing. If you choose to go into industry, and at some point in your life, you decide that's not what you want to do for the rest of your life, that's not as rewarding as you think it might be, then those years in industry will make you a better teacher. So I always make those bridges to be able to have people come back. So I say, when I'm recruiting people to be teachers, I work with 20-somethings, 30-somethings, 40-somethings, 50-somethings. I've even had a 60-year-old who has finished a career, but still has some fuel in their tank and wants to do something. And we enable them to be a teacher. It is absolutely a challenge, the pay gap. And there's certain areas that are my technical area. Anything mechanical is really difficult.
Mike, I'll
Yeah.
ask you. Oh, I'm
Sorry, I
go
was
ahead.
just gonna say, I really think Michael and Terry just covered it all. Teaching is it's a work of heart, right? And you've really got to be more interested in building the community, and the connections that you make. And I like what you said, Terry, about, and someone else said something about, the first no isn't always the only no or the last no. I can't remember how you said it, but that person, if they're not right for the classroom, can still be someone that maybe your current students can do an internship or an externship with. It's always about trying to continue to build those networking relationships, and you never know what's going to happen around the bend.
Mr. Perry, do you have a question?
Yeah, it's a challenging question to the panel. I think sessions like this are essential. They're phenomenal. I really enjoy them. And just recently, Actia did something very similar in that they kind of showcased their not so recent grads, but folks that went through CTE programs and now in the field. But sometimes, and I've been in it a long time, so I'm guilty of it as well. Sometimes we often are so proud of what we do, we preach to the converted. We speak among ourselves all the time about how great CTE is. We have our students speak. But the challenge is, how do we take the show on the road? How do we come outside that box of just Grow your own, 100% believe in it. I built my whole program. I'm growing my own, all those things, but that's still in our box. That show isn't on the road. Terry, I know, has expanded it greatly, but oftentimes within ag venues as well. So my gut tells me, and this, I may get in trouble for this, that it's the challenge really for the professional organizations. I'm thinking that the professional organizations are our key to really get out there and hit the road, put the rubber to the pavement, and with everyone's help, and everyone should be involved in their professional organization. It's easy to say, yeah, go out and do that, but you should be involved in that professional organization. But I think how do we hit the venues that we never go to? How do we get those populations that don't even know what CTE stands for? I'm wondering if you guys have insights on how we all can be doing a better job going to the untouched, the untapped populations.
So one example is, this is not a success story, but I had a student who came out of really deep science research and a master's degree and doing all kinds of poster sessions and such, and now she is an ag teacher and is very successful. I really, missed the boat. I haven't missed it completely. It's still there, but she's made it very clear that there are many more people like her in the science circle that would take this trip if they even knew it existed. And she said exactly what you did, Steve, is that there's so many folks who don't even know what we do. I do think, I agree, professional organizations are a big one. We're seeing some real benefit from our industry people. So there are all kinds of organizations. I mean, I'll pick a Farm Bureau and even media kinds of groups who are now highlighting careers areas. Morning Clips every once in a while has a different career area that they're talking about. I don't know that it's reaching young people per se. I will say that in my lifetime, I'll just say in the last, I think 3 to 4 years, I have seen more CTE things on the TV in the Capital District than I have ever seen before. So I'm not sure who's doing that, but that is like, wow. And regional occupational centers, so kudos to that kind of thing. But that's reaching a huge, broader audience, Steve, that I think is going to touch the iceberg that you're talking about.
Any other questions from, Michael, go ahead.
And I would just, I would definitely agree with Terry, that's a challenge. And, it's something, I think we've identified, and, I think, the best, strategies is, really kind of thinking about those audiences that you are missing. I do agree, Terry. So around here, I know I've seen a lot of commercials for Whoosh Wheat Bosies. They've been doing a lot of ads, and it's excellent to kind of see those things, but sort of thinking about the other audiences, particularly non-CTE administrative audiences, certain businesses, counselors, education organizations. So I think we do a good job with our people because they're easy. They don't need convincing. They love CTE like we do. But I think, as, and professional organizations will be good tools for this, is kind of identifying like those key groups we're not reaching. And I think in different CTE content areas, it's maybe slightly different groups, and coming up with, targeted strategies for that.
I think we need the noise that you're making, Steve, and that, I'll draw that little farm analogy. There's only so much time in the day, and it's going to sound like a bit of an excuse, but I think all of us are guilty of looking at the cultivated field. All right, we know it's not all planted to people that are going to be ag teachers, but we're looking at that field where we got a better shot of picking some winners out of that field, as opposed to you're suggesting we walk out into the wilderness and it's going to be harder to find those jewels or those gems. But we know every once in a while out there in that world, there are some very, very special people that we can find. And I think worthy, especially when we're in this demand, because let's face it, folks, everybody's in a human resource shortage and everybody's going to be doing this. It's not just us working alone. We're in here in a real battle with every other human resource folks that are looking for people.
Wonderful. Sheldon, did you have a final comment? I see you're unmuted again.
Oh, I was supposed, before I talked, I was supposed to give a huge shout out to Oswego. That's where I get my master's from. So like, big up to Oswego. Just sorry.
There you go. We are coming up on our time this evening. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. So with that being said, from our panelists, are there any final thoughts or comments or words of wisdom you may have? And it can be nothing, but if you have something that you've wanted to share that you've not shared, this would be your opportunity to do so.
I think I just want to thank you all for the invitation, for the conversation. And I think, really caring is key and exposure is key. When I started off as, a lowly English teacher here and then became an administrative intern and now vice principal, when I first started, I was one of those people who did not know anything about CTE. And it was the exposure to CTE that made me say, wow, this is something special. And so the more we can think collaboratively and creatively about how to expose more folk, across our state and maybe even across the country about, the kinds of things that are possible, I think we can only go up from here.
I really appreciate what I'm going to call the new CTE. In my lifetime, I'm not sure that CTE was and has the synergy that it has now. And I give credit to ACTE, I give credit to NYSACTE, especially in New York. It wasn't that groups were necessarily, well, some might have even been hostile to each other. In my career, various groups looked at themselves as competition to get students back and forth. But I really do believe now that we're from professional organizations and such, not that there aren't some of those kind of things, but the willingness of ag people to work with FECs and business to work with other groups and to pull that together. I give kudos to a lot of people. Mike, you happen to be at the helm of that right now, but there's a lot of people that you're standing on the shoulders of that have created this concept of CTE, and quite honestly, in my area is probably one of the toughest ones for us to actually have agriculture teachers say that they're a CTE ag teacher is no small trip. All right, but it's happening, and I really do. I think we're in good shape, or better shape.
Yeah, I'd want to also extend, my thanks to SUNY Oswego for inviting me to be on this panel. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed being with everybody this evening. And, my final thought I would say is, we're in a very good and a very encouraging place for CTE right now. There's a lot of potentially exciting things on the horizon. And I would just encourage everybody to really harness that positive energy.
Yeah, again, as everyone else said, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Shout out to SUNY Oswego. Appreciate you guys. And, shout out to all CTE. Continue to motivate, innovate, and collaborate, and we'll take this thing to the next level. So again, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much to our 4 wonderful panelists this evening. Thank you so much to Cynthia for all of your work, and to also SUNY Oswego CTEP department for hooking us up this evening with this wonderful opportunity to converse with one another. But I thank you all for the privilege of your time this evening. Thank you for the rich conversation, and continue to do great things in the field of CTE. We're in a good place, but there's plenty of work still to be done. But I wish you all the best, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you all.
You're welcome.